Dahoodpostman, Professor Melly Bell. This is not a glorification or a glamorization. This is an education. You can go anywhere in the world and get a couple of lies, but you come right here to get the truth. Be sure to click the notification bell, like, subscribe, share, drop a comment down below. So when the dope content hit, it'll feel like it's the first and the 15th. Lock the door. Professor Melly Bell, the Hood Postman. Who am I here with today?
Swannyfly off the east side out the 50s, the top half, Hooper, Ascot, Central Avenue, Slauson, down through Vernon, Ascot and Hoopers.
Is that still part of the bottoms when you say top half?
Yeah, when they say top half, a lot of people like to claim the bottoms. I'm just saying that if I was banging and I went to jail, I wouldn't claim the bottoms because I'm telling the dude I'm from BSV and it is what it is. That's when I was banging. But if I ain't banging, I'm just off the east side, just a normal cat. Of course, I'm gonna say I'm from the bottoms, but I'm out the 50s. I'm close to Slauson. So I don't call the bottoms. Everybody calls it the bottoms, but I think the bottoms is in between when you hit the 40s. I'm out the 50s.
Okay, got it. I'm glad you explained it. And I want to say this as noted. There's a lot of players and hustlers that came out that section where that they don't, you know what I mean? People don't know, like Harry O grew up on 48th, and just a lot of people that actually came out that area because it runs so, as far as, because a lot of them, they'll say the bottoms, you know what I mean? But at the same time, we know that it has been carved up and sectioned off, and now it's about neighborhoods.
Yeah, a lot of people says they claim the bottom because I guess, but it's crazy though. Like I told dudes, when I was banging in the 80s, I couldn't claim the bottoms because we had ultimate enemies from over there, and I'm not trying to trip up with nobody or join somebody hood or just because we're from the bottom because I was banging. Bloods was Bloods, Crips was Crips. So if I'm claiming the bottom, that's mean I'm not on that tip when I really was on that tip on the streets. And if I go into jail in the 80s, I'm on that set trip because I was young. I was a kid, so all I knew was villain. Villain was my God then. But now I know villain ain't my God, and I done turned my life over to God. I don't praise villain like that no more. But villain was actually my God. Everything villain did, I stand for. So therefore, I wasn't claiming no low bottoms when I went to the pen back in the 80s.
Okay. Share a bit about your background that involved villains that maybe you haven't shared yet.
Feelings about my background, claiming villain. My background is a long history as villains. As in 1982, I turned villain. Right, I was really excited about them dudes. They was riders. It was a hell of a name, a claiming villain, hanging out with certain homies and chilling. And as a collective family, being with my homies, it just made me want to turn villain because I love the hood and I love the name itself. And being that I was one of the homies that they had names for villains, and as I grew up being a villain and started hanging around villains, I wanted to catch me a reputation of being one of the elite homies from my neighborhood. And that's where I was headed to because I loved the set and I loved the name. Bloodstone Villain was a hell of a name. To join a hood like that, it was like a real family. And you know, like it was like a hood that I can't explain. That being with homies, sleeping over homies' houses, catching a bus. Homie, you ain't got to go home tonight. We know where you stay. It was just a lot of love from Zabies to 55th to our whole hood. Our old hood used to be Twin Ponds. When I first came around the villains, Twin Ponds was on 52nd Street between Central and Hooper. Love Twin Ponds, and that's where all the villains used to be in a little little apartment complex where Twin Ponds was known. That's where the villains used to hang out at, and it was a Hooper Avenue School was right across the street from it.
Zadie's was actually a liquor store, right?
Yeah, Xavier's was a liquor store on 51st. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Xavier's was where villains hung out continuously from from 55th, 56, 57, 58 on all the way down to 51st, 52nd, all the way. Our hood was expanded kind of big because we had damn near, approximately damn near, we was probably like 80, 100 deep in the 80s. We had a long reputation, man. Our hood was from 40, we used to go to 48 Park right there on by Compton Avenue. I don't know that side street name, all the way from the pool hall was on 49th between 48. Man, we used to, as in 80s, we used to walk through there, man, and hang out at the pool hall right on 49th and 40 between 49th and 48 and Compton. And we used to go to 48 Park. So our hood was kind of big back then. We extended with homies, and it was just, we used to walk all the way from the 50s to the 20s down Hooper, just going through the 30s, the 40s, Ross Snyder's Park, and then we end up to the 20s in the Outlaws. And also used to walk through the Pueblos and hang out at Slauson Park back in the 80s. You know, we had our hood was pretty big with good homies and solid riders.
What were some of the factors or the circumstances to the name becoming Villain? If you can explain that.
I can't. I didn't start the hood. The circumstance, I really don't know at that part, but I can just tell you that the homies started the hood and started claiming. We just started claiming Bloodstone Villain. Could have been Eastside Villain. I really don't know the circumstances or the facts because, like I said, I started banging Villain at 82.
Okay, let me put it another way. What's your opinion on the name Villain itself? What does that mean to you guys?
My opinion, villain. If you look it up in a dictionary, that's my opinion. A villain is ruthless. Mm-hmm. He conniving. He steals, and he also rip your throat out your heart. You know, that's, you look in a dictionary, you'll find out what a villain is, and that's my opinion on a villain. Far as you know, what a villain is really ruthless. They steal, they rob, and kill. You know, and that's a real villain for you. That's my opinion of being a villain. You know,
how did that being a part of that impact you or affect your, even people that loved you that wasn't villains, but how did it impact you and how did it affect them when you embraced it fully? Because, you know, as myself, I'm just going to use me. Right. When I first started getting it was like I was teetering, you know what I mean? And then as months or maybe year passed, then I became more comfortable and I started doing a little, other words, I'm trying to one up the next guy.
Yeah, being that and you know, my family was like, dang, you a blood. I used to bring my family to the hood. They used to go Bloodstone Villain. I said, yeah, you know, they used to come on 55th with me and they used to come to the store right there. We used to chill. My family was like, dang, you a villain. So, and the impact of me being a villain, the dudes that I grew up with a lot of Crips. And as a kid, when none of them banging at first, I wasn't even banging. But when I seen them and I seen them going towards as we was getting older, and I seen them at certain schools, and I seen them on the streets and in the store, they was like, "Damn, nigga, you from Bloodstone Philly?" And you know, all my partners I grew up with was Crips. A lot of them is gone now. They end up dying. A lot of them, some of them turned H-Ray, some of them turned 60, some of them turned Hoover. You know what I'm saying? I grew up with a few Hoovers from childhood, you know, and a lot of dudes is dead now. And when they were shocked when I said I was a blood because I grew up with a lot of dudes and certain Crip hoods. My grandmother stayed in 11 Deuce Hoover hood. Like I say, my mom stayed. My mom's and pops, they grew up in the 60s, and then my auntie stayed in H-Ray. So it was crazy, and I done met a lot of Crips, man. They tripped out like, "Dang, you ain't no Crip. I thought you'd be a Crip." I just tuned to be blood because I wanted to do something different. And bloods, it was hard to be a blood back then. And then being a blood, man, it was just something different because everybody wanted to be the Crip. The Crip walk, you know, the hats, the stocking caps, you know, everything was piggyback off of the Crips. The Crips been out for a long time, so a lot of people wanted that style by listening to certain names that OG Crips had. So I was like, man, I'm gonna be a blood. I want to see how it's gonna like to be a blood. But joining a blood back then in the 80s, because that's when the gang banging really jumped off. We jumped off the porch in the 80s. That's when the gang banging started. The homies that started the hood didn't really bang like us, but we give them the props for that. But we the ones started the banging. So going to jail, and saying what you was, man, you had your hands full, period. I don't care what nobody say. A blood had their hands full.
Lock the door.
Straight out of Compton, original streets. Grew up with the lion, see what the criminals see. Now he a giant and a pivotal key. Got it down to a science, this the visual streets. He came up with Bullet, he came up with Turtle. Lived life to the fullest, he put it all in the journal. We dodging them bullets, we jumping them hurdles. It's the Hood Postman, we in the streets universal.
Hood Postman, Professor Belly Bell. This is not a glorification or a glamorization. This is an education. You can go anywhere in the world and get a couple of lies, but you come right here to get the truth. Be sure to click the notification bell, like, subscribe, share, drop a comment down below. So when the dope content hit, it'll feel like it's the first and the 15th. Lock the door.